that means, but I wanted to focus a little bit on the business side of it and go, what's the business all about? Why do we have to improve this thing? Is it the best way to go about improving quality of life in general? And I thought, let's complicate it a little bit. If there are any CAs in the house, don't spoil it for everybody else. It's not as complicated as it looks. I think when we look at business, business is about generating value. And value is generally measured and perceived by what we call a customer, or a person who values their quality of life improving. And what we do from a government point of view is we say we'll elect this government, and this government is going to give us a particular quality of life if we live in this region, and to reward that, we give them taxes. And then they use those taxes to improve our quality of life. So if you look at that equation, everything on the right-hand side of that column is really what we're going to focus on. The first part, which is that RF, is government. Government then says, we've promised the citizens this money, but we're not really going to get the money immediately. We'll get it when they pay their taxes, but they expect an improvement to their quality of life so that they can pay their taxes. So they issue out what they generally call bonds, and that is a risk-free premium. So they say to you as an individual, you as an investor, you as a person with a bit of money who wants value, give us a bit of your money, we're going to provide basic services, and then we'll give you back your money with a little bit of a interest, a little bit of a return. And that's risk-free, because that's how governments run, that's how society is basically governed throughout the world. Then there's a second group of people that say, you could give the money to government, but don't give all of it to government, because if we just add a little bit of risk to that world, we can bring you just a little bit of a better return. So we will give it to a couple of individuals who will go to the very same citizens who are getting these basic services, but they'll offer a little bit more than just basic services, because we understand the customer and we understand what he needs, we understand what the citizen needs. And for that, they'll reward us a little bit more, and you'll make a little bit more money. It's a bit more risky than government, it's not guaranteed, but we'll spread it out. And that's kind of what we have when we talk about the stock market. What we're about, I think a majority of us in the room here, whether you're working as a business or getting services from a business or investing in businesses, is you're about that word B there, which is the beta, which is, can we up the risk, and how high can we up the risk in a way that we can get more value from our citizen, we can provide more value, get a better return, and give you a better return than if you had given your money to the government, or if you had put your money in the stock market. And that's what business from a value point of view is. It's about uncertainty. We go from risk-free, from absolutely certain low returns, to this world where there's a little bit of a higher risk, but we are expected as captains, as managers, as employees running businesses to be masters of uncertainty. So then, if that's the case, then I ask myself, we're starting to hear these terms like VUCA, there's volatility, uncertainty, I forget what the C stands for, and ambiguity. All of a sudden, uncertainty becomes a problem. But our core being, our coming about as a generator of value is about how we are good at navigating uncertainty. Why is this uncertainty unsettling now all of a sudden? And if we think about it, I think it's about that customer that we claim to know so well. If government was offering that basic service, everything above that, whether that was stock market or indeed our businesses, is about us understanding that customer and be able to fulfill some kind of need for that customer in a way that they would reward us a bit more money, I guess, than it would if we weren't there. So customer's king and customer remains king. But what technology does is it starts bringing about this world where that customer now has something they didn't have before, which was choice. That choice starts evolving this customer. And this customer is no longer as recognizable to the business that was providing the product initially if that product has not changed. And our customers have moved from this world of expecting stuff to demanding stuff. If you have this choice, you're not going to stick around and wait. You're going to change from one product A to product B because product B now satisfies a particular need in terms of how you've evolved. So I think it's not the uncertainty in general, but it's the uncertainty of us understanding our customers. And the rate of change, the faster that change is, the less intimate we are with our customer if we're not changing. In the local market, South Africa was ranked at about number 82 out of 190 countries in terms of the ease of doing business. And one of the things government is doing is focusing on bringing that number down or improving us as a country. That means new entrants coming in to compete and understanding your customer better and starting to offer them alternatives. In terms of foreign markets, same thing is happening in that space. They're looking at us as the new market. So if you're a business today that claims you are a captain of uncertainty and you're not innovating, you're not looking to understand your customer and move with them as they evolve, then your customer intimacy drops quite rapidly. And that is really the imperative almost to change. Innovation is not a matter of should we improve this product because we made a bit of profit and we could maybe get some top line margin. It's a matter of survival. If you're not changing your business, a lot of analysts predict that you will not be in business in 5 years from now. And those analysts predict that your product should change at least 10% per year. So I don't know how true that is. But what I take out of it is you cannot not innovate. So the first dilemma that you get presented with in terms of business in general is, if I'm going to change, who do I change? Do I change me as a company? Or do I change my understanding of a customer, or even shift to a customer who my product fits far better than current? So that's kind of the first dilemma that you run into in terms of general business. And you could also express it a different way, it's if I'm going to employ technological advancements in my business, am I going to do them for efficiency gain, or am I going to do them for growth gain? The efficiency can be represented by something like lean, where you're going out and you're looking for 7 different types of waste, and slowly you try and knock those down. And growth can be just represented by you understanding your customer better, knowing what they would pay you more for, and changing your means of production to produce your product and service to better suit that need. In both instances, whether you're going for efficiency or you're going for growth, or even going for efficiency and growth, you need to get closer to your customer. And the only way you can get closer to your customer, I argue, is to look at the data. And that's where IoT fits in. A lot of the data that we look at pre-IoT, pre-digitization, your information being able to be transmitted digitally, is audits and people coming into your organizational registers of where things may lie. It's a lot of historical information. If the rate of change of our customer is so high that customer intimacy is shifting and that customer is evolving, if we're looking at historical data, by the time we change our product, it still might not meet our new customer. These things like technology follow what is called Moore's Law, and Moore's Law is simply every 2 years the cost of a technology that is IT-based will halve, or you can get double the compute speed. So that means every 2 years, these new entrants that are coming in, be they local or global, or anybody who's improving their product, can take advantage of this digital exponential technology curve. So we want to move away from a world of historical information to one where we can be far closer to to our customer because the data that we get presented is real-time or near real-time. And that's kind of what IoT presents you. It presents you the opportunity to put down sensors, create almost a sensory network, create this neural kind of business where you're in touch with not just your customer, but yourself, and you're able to spot when you have value degradation. So the future is why we kind of are all here, is to listen and figure out what IoT can do, what digitization can do in terms of our business, and it's really to move into that world where we're able to sense value degradation, or even start to predict what kind of customers we're going to have 6 months from now, 12 months from now, and change our means of production to match that. Even when we've made that decision, just the essence of business and the people that gave us this capital for us to go and create this means of production are even more uncertain than we are uncertain in terms of this customer changing. So we start experiencing what I'd call investor pressure. So these investors are saying, if these are the captains of uncertainty, I need to check on them more regularly, periodically, every 3 months now, rather than every year, to make sure that they really can indeed produce the returns that they promised me, and why I didn't go to the stock market or to government. And that now creates almost this world where you know you need to change, you know you need to change either your customer, yourself, or both, but you're stuck in this world where you need to show financial improvements to show that you are still worth investing in as a business, but at the same time you need to change your means of production to more suitably or to be more relevant to your customer should the future come. And I have it on good authority that the future is never late. And how we experience this is it pushes us into this other world where we feel comfortable as well. Change is hard. Change is very painful. We all hate change, no matter what anybody says, including your change agents in the company. Because what change does is, if we look at that old story of a child going from unable to walk to walking, it's very painful at the beginning. That's why they're born so chubby, because they're expected to fall a lot. And as they become more competent, they are obviously human beings that live a better quality of life by being able to walk. But most of us don't remember how painful it was to walk. So let me remind you of when you had to drive. When you were pre-teen, you didn't even know what you didn't know about driving. And then when you hit into those teens and you started going through your learners, you hit that world that they call conscious incompetence. You now know what you don't know, and you're going to go through a couple of driving lessons to know this stuff. And then you get into that world of conscious competence where you now finally know, and you do it, but you do it very consciously. And then to where you are today. A lot of us don't remember when we changed down, how many times we were in gear 3, if you're driving a manual, when you clutched, when you indicated. It's all neural, it's all intuitive, you are one with the car. And that's the benefit of changing. But change when it started, and I take you back to 13, 14, when you couldn't take yourself to a party, change was hard. And so in that world where the investors are coming in and saying, show me financial improvement, we are tempted to just perfect what we do right now. We don't really want to change. We want to get into that world of 10,000 hours, and we want to just, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But innovation, unfortunately, is a matter of survival. We need to get into this world where we evolve, where we figure out what our customer is becoming so that we can prove to them that we are able to improve their lives to such an extent that they're able to reward us, and we can produce value to our investors, to our society, and to ourselves. So if you do buy into my argument of starting, and you have to start IoT, then you move into that second dilemma. And that second dilemma is, where do you start? So you buy the argument that you're not going to start tomorrow, you're going to start now. Again, you're using the same capital allocations. What do you focus on? What can you get the most value out of? And satisfy these two, investor plus the customer. There I'm a little bit more prescriptive in terms of what we've experienced in the IoT industry in South Africa and across the world. IoT gives us the ability to do is it gives us the ability to not just rip out all of the assets that are currently generating us some kind of income, but to rather augment those assets until they get to end of life. And then when they get to end of life, we can replace those assets with digital ones. So I suggest that the first place that you start is retrofit IoT. So you go out into a world where you put onto your analog assets these devices that are able to produce IoT, and those are readily available today. The images that I showed here are 3 local companies. In fact, Macrocom is one of the companies that's here, that bottom right. And what these are retrofit devices that go onto water meters and convert your water meter into from analog to digital. The second thing is, again, with this capital allocations, you can't do it everywhere. You can't identify all of your assets that matter to you and matter to your customer and just go on this IoT splurge. We'd love you to. If you do have the budget, ignore this talk completely and come talk to us. But if you're like the rest of us in terms of human beings, you're going to have to do this incremental. So retrofit and incremental, I think, is how you address that second dilemma. There's fruits, and you have to pick your low-hanging fruit. So how you prioritize them, you can slice it and dice it a lot of ways. I think to keep with the theme of where I've gotten to you two up until now, is think about, are you doing this for yourself or for your customer, which is that horizontal, that at the bottom. Am I doing it for my business or am I doing it for my customer? And then the second one comes into your assets, and that's on the vertical. Am I looking to retrofit some kind of IoT device onto my existing asset, or am I looking to replace my asset outright with something that has the ability of digital natively? And I think that's the best place to kind of start. And when we look at where these two things intersect, on the bottom one, if you're looking from an internal point of view versus an external point of view, I think you'll find that you understand yourself far better than you understand your customer. Even if you are changing, you have a better handle of who you are versus who your customer is. So I think the low-hanging fruit would be on the bottom left. And similarly, you have assets today. Those assets haven't sweated all the way through. So look at rather your existing assets for yourself rather than looking at replacing your assets outright. So you go into this analog world and you move it from know eventually to know now, which is that bottom left. And then from there, the incremental, you make your decisions based on what's most pressing and what's most favorable. For some of our customers, they have assets that are coming into end of life, and they make sure that those assets they then convert to digital, and now they've got the ones that they retrofitted plus the ones that they've converted. And for some of them, and I've got a use case later on, they move into the customer's area and they say, now that I understand myself better, can I understand a bit more about my customer, and how can I get more of the share of wallet, if you will. And we all eventually want to be in that top right, but starting in the top right is the most trickiest if you're still in analog. A lot of the businesses that started a year ago, 2 years ago, are now aiming at that top right, because there you're able to know more and you're able to sell more. When it comes to that more word, why IoT is particularly interesting and particularly appealing to companies that have to innovate and are looking at technology is it gives you the ability to move your granularity of knowledge from where it is now to a rather exponentially rich one quite quickly. And we heard Bronwyn, as she welcomed us, saying in 2020 there'll be 100 billion devices even that are IoT. And then we had Deputy Minister, Mrs. Kekana, say there'll even be 1 trillion. So I have to top both of them. So I argue there'll be a squillion. Because I don't know what comes after trillion. But really it's that as you have these opportunities to move your assets from analog to digital, you find a lot of these use cases. And what has to be at the core of these use cases is you have to remind yourself that you're doing this for customer intimacy. You're doing this to understand your customer better. And so always keep in mind that if you are able to not create an efficient nightmare, cost-wise, and if you are able to, once you've done this, actually get the information that you want, reliability-wise, you know, that's almost why IoT is appealing, and that's what you want to get out of IoT. So a lot of use cases that will eventually result in you lowering the total cost of production, lowering your total cost of enablement, but most importantly, the total cost of maintaining. Because it's cheaper for you to pick up the error at the beginning rather than later on when you have to get your customer back. If you've got the customer, keep your customer rather than trying to woo them back. So that brings us into the what I call the third dilemma for IoT. Because when we speak IoT and we speak about these many devices, we know that a lot of them are not going to be in the environments that traditionally have good connectivity. In fact, the Deputy Minister said one of the things that we have to try and focus on when we go through this forum for the next 2 days is we must look at connectivity and make sure that there is connectivity for all, not just humans, also these things. So the third dilemma that you end up facing from a customer point of view is there's lots of options. But luckily you've got great partners, and the partners, technology partners, understand that in the wireless connectivity ecosystem, they are eventually going to use all of these connectivities. And this pyramid is my attempt to try and explain to you when these are relevant as you step through your IoT journey, going from retrofit and incremental into that replace world. If we look at the construct of a pyramid and assume that things that at the top are few versus the things that are at the bottom that are many, we want to take advantage of as much as possible for few things and as much as possible for many things. So on the vertical, we look at how much data is being transmitted. And data has a byproduct of using up a lot of battery or costing a lot of money. So we want to focus on things like autonomous vehicles, things like our cell phones being at the top of the pyramid, and these 20 billion, 100 billion, 1 squillion things being covered by as much as possible at the bottom. So if at the top of the pyramid we called it broadband, the exact opposite of that should be some word that's opposite to broadband, and I suggest narrowband. But not just narrowband, ultra narrowband. So as you come down the pyramid, you'll be transmitting less data, but you'll be able to start taking advantage of the battery usage and the battery power. So that's kind of the third dilemma that you'll end up in. And as you digitize your assets, make sure that you bear this in mind, because this has the biggest implication when it comes to your cost, whether that cost is production, enablement, or maintenance. The second part of that world, I did say, was reliability. And from a SqwidNet point of view, this is one of our focuses. And how we view reliability when it comes to IoT is we look at it from a coverage point of view, first of all. So we believe if you're going to be spending this money and you're going to be going on this digitization journey, make sure you have something that is able to speak or hear your asset speak as it speaks. So we've deployed over 1,000 base stations throughout the country, and that allows us to cover over 90% of the population, and we are able to give you an IoT connectivity network. But what's more important is some of these assets that you'll be digitizing are not stationary. They have to move from point A to point B. If you're in logistics, you know, you're worried about your assets in transit, and that's one of the advantages of having a network like SqwidNet. We are able to cover the N's, the M's, and the R's, as our sales executive calls them, which is the national roads, the major roads, and also the rural roads. So that reliability comes from, if I'm going to spend this money, I don't want to go back into this world and see why my knowledge is not as current, why my data is not fresh. You want to make sure that you are in real time, in tune with your business. So I thought, let me walk through a use case before I leave you with just dilemmas, but show you how one company of ours, one channel partner, we call them, one partner of ours, solve a particular problem and almost walk you through this IoT journey for somebody who had to make these decisions and see where they kind of got to. In the Western Cape, as we all know, if you've visited recently or you have relatives there, they've gone through a big water scarcity. In about 2017, the level restrictions hit their highs. I think they got to a level 6 water restriction, which meant you have less water as a resident, but you also pay more for that less water. There's this company called Liberté, and they started struggling with one particular problem. About May, June of that year, they started experiencing high water usage, like crazily higher than normal. It's an old apartment building. It's got about 51 units in there. You know, they walked around, they scoured, they said, we'll spot the leak, and when we spot the leak, we can sort it out and we can figure out what's kind of going wrong. For 6 months, they found nothing. They tried to figure this stuff out. They tried to negotiate with the municipality, give them a bit more time. They mustn't be penalized. But the municipality said, you guys are wasting water, and rules are rules. In fact, we think we're going to cut you off in terms of supply. So the body corp of Liberté then approached Apex Innovation and said, can you help us know a bit? Can we help us know now? There's something we don't know. We don't know what's going on, why our water's up there. And what Apex Innovation did is they went out in one of those meters earlier on. They went and put those for each of the 51 houses, and they got into, and they used Retrofit. They put old meters and used one of those retrofits because it was the lowest cost, and they were able to, by December, or in December, immediately have a more individualized, a more data-rich view of Liberté. What that allowed them to find quite immediately was one apartment where the leak was coming from, because it had the highest water usage and all the others were quite average. And that leak, they got a plumber in, they discovered that that leak was coming from within the walls and draining into the ground. So that's why they couldn't spot this leak. It was losing about 3,000 liters, kiloliters, sorry, 3,000 liters. Losing about 3,000 liters per day, just that one unit. 3,000 liters per day at level 5 restrictions at the time was about 62,000 rand. So just this one apartment was costing them in excess of over 62,000 rand in terms of their bill. And this is why this was a big problem for them. They found three or four other leaks, not as big as that one. But then one of the other interesting things that they discovered once they aggregated all of their water usage in terms of individual is they realized that the municipality's bulk meter was also overcharging. It was overreading by about 20%. And so that's from a no eventually to a no now world that Liberté was able to quite immediately take advantage of IoT. Where they now is they spoke to council, of course, immediately. They replaced that meter, and each of the residents now have an individualized, a more intimate experience with their body corp, or more intimate experience with their water. But Liberté itself, just from the savings of them finding these leaks and sorting these leaks out, were able to make a decision to then move into that sell now world. And they put up a borehole for the exact same residents. And the borehole now waters the common areas. And that drops their water usage even further. You know, so they were able to put that borehole in just from the savings, just from an efficiency point of view. And they're able to take that even further by putting in a borehole. So that's almost a practical example of what IoT can do for a practical citizen who lives in South Africa today. And the solutions that they employed were local, produced by local businesses, and those businesses were able to, with the value that they generated for that body corp, show them a better return than if they had taken that money and stuck it into a lower, a risk-free investment. So I think that's IoT. I think that's what it does for a lot of us. And as much as I spoke about just water, That example applies across the industry. And that's why we argue that IoT drives innovation, because it drives that imperative to change and also gives you the ability at a cost that you can afford to change. Whether you're below the ground in something like mining and your assets are miners themselves or machinery or the whereabouts, all the way to above the ground, agriculture, manufacturing, shipping those goods into our cities, into our stores, and eventually into our hands. IoT does drive innovation, and innovation does improve our quality of life. Thank you very much, and thank you for listening. I wish you a great...